Welcome to episode 8 of season 2 of Matire Gemi, a bi-weekly podcast where we help you learn the Agikoyo culture, history, and heritage in English and in a fun, light-hearted way. I'm your anchor, Jeriwa Diho Mojiro wa Bareake Hara, and as always, I'm joined by Wayaki and King Oriwa Kanyi. Now, today we have a really interesting and delicious episode. Now, this episode is a continuation of the listeners' edition, where we go deep and we answer the questions that you submitted to us. And here's what I have to say. We have some explosive information in this episode because we cover 5 main areas. The first thing we cover today is the idea of spirituality. And we answer the big question as to why the Agikoyo took so easily to Christianity and so easily left behind their ways. The second thing we talk about is we go into esoteric knowledge, where we really even talk about some herbs and really start to understand, did the Agikoyo enter altered states of consciousness as part of their esoteric ways? The third thing that we then go into is the naming based on our culture. How did we name ourselves? How did we name our children? We then go ahead and we talk about social issues, right? So other topics that we bunched into that area, such as questions on whether the Agikoyo, had a supreme leader in the past, whether we celebrate birthdays, and how we handle inheritance. And then finally, we close with a question of single motherhood. How did the Agikoyo think of single parenthood, but in particular, single motherhood? Did the Agikoyo think of it the same way we did today? Or rather, the same way we do today? That is what we're going to jump in. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the deliciousness of episode 8. All right, guys, as always, welcome. I am so excited for the second episode of the listeners edition. So as usual, I'll turn it over to you, Wayaki and Kingori, to introduce yourselves before we dive in. All right, Wayaki, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jerry. Jetagwa Wayaki wa Gĩchanga, ndĩ mũcara wa mbare ya Mũturi, hamarika mawathani ndĩ wa Mwangi. Ndĩ mũihwo na airimũ a mbare ya Mbogo, and o mũthenya nĩ njugaga nĩ thayũ. And I'm excited to continue this journey answering these questions for our listeners.
Yes, thank you so much. We got such great feedback from episode 7. So thank you to you and King Ori. So King Ori, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Once again, oyore King Ori wa Kanyi, mo boy wa mbare ya Marigo, wa Gĩthako kĩa Mũruga. Ndĩ wa marika merĩ ma wathani ndĩ Mwangi Gacĩro nĩ Maina, na ndĩ mũthuri wa kĩama na o hĩndĩ ciothe njugaga nĩ thayũ. I am happy to be here, Jerry, and yeah, let's dive into these questions.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, the first set of questions that we're going to dive into is on spirituality. And we only had one question here, but it was big. It was explosive, right? And candidly, guys, I want to answer this one first. So what do you guys think about one of you reading the question verbatim, right? And then I'll come in after you, to give you my answer to it. Who wants to read it?
I'll let King
Wayaki will read it.
Okay, I'll read it. So the question here is, I have a weird question. In your humble opinions, why do you think the Agikoyo took to Christianity so easily? Our culture was so rich and deeply rooted, so it would be interesting to hear your views. A relative argued it was because of greed, promises of power over other members of the community. Yeah, that's the question.
Thank you so much. And to answer this question, I'm going to sing you guys a song imperfectly. And some of you may remember this song from church, Sunday school, or even in primary school. And along the way, because I don't know the tune very well, I'm going to ask you, King Ori, to join me. And this story that I'm about to read you, right, I got from the page called Real Agekoyo History and Culture. And when I read it, I cannot even begin to explain what it did to me. And this, I think, is a perfect opener to this discussion, which will be explosive, but in an interesting way, in an educative way, in a self-reflective way. So let me go ahead and jump in. So here's the song, guys. And King Ori, I'm going to ask you to help me along the way. It goes something like this. Dahunyokete gyuma kwa wainga. Dahunyokete gyuma kwa wainga. Jesu ake joya.
Ega. Ake hata maruta. Ake hubaguo ya ohono kyo. That's the one, right?
Yeah. Kwa wainga.
Diga shoka. Toine rege. Diga shoka.
Yes. Thank you for helping me read that. So listen to this story. This is a song from a historical moment in Gikuyu history. And remember, we still sing this song in Sunday school and in primary school. The year is 1889. Where Tumutumu Mission stands today, you can only see a medicine man's hat, Wainga. In previous years, his compound wouldn't be as full as it is today. Many people know natural herbs and the diseases they cure or remedy, so visiting a medicine man is a last resort. But today, the compound is full. It has been this full for a few weeks or so, and it might continue to be this full for several months to come. There is a strange disease in the land, a disease the Gikuyu nation hasn't seen before. If this disease gets to you, your skin gets itchy, hot, and it develops rashes. People have called it mohare. Story goes that if you get this disease, you'll keep scratching yourself. You'll be so itchy such that your hands wouldn't be doing a good job, and you'll opt to use a moratina, the plant. If you stand from afar and watch those people coming out of Wainga's hat, you'll see them come out covered in white dust. From this far, it's difficult to differentiate whether the whiteness is from ashes or ira. Wainga, a renowned medicine man, has never seen this disease before. None of the knowledge passed down to him through the word of mouth as collected by our forefathers can help cure this disease. Wainga only has a remedy to the itchiness, covering them with white soil or sometimes ashes. Yeah, man's gotta improvise. Patients can then go home and wait to heal naturally or die. As you turn to go on with your journey, you see another relatively new hat. It also has some patients. Word is that this hat belongs to Jesu, Jesus, and his servant is a white Scottish man whom locals have nicknamed Nyarota. Nyarota also says he has a remedy to the disease. Apparently, Jesu can heal them and any other disease they have. When a patient accepts the invitation, they will wash the whiteness off, apply oil on the patients, give them new clothes, and give them medicine. And drum roll, his patients actually have a lower mortality rate than Wainga's. When asked, he says it is the power of his master, Jesu. He even openly tells people that they should gauge the power of Jesu and the power of Wainga and decide for themselves. Evidence, of course, says that Jesu is stronger than Wainga, because after all, Jeso's patients have a higher mortality, have a higher survival rate. Important history or events in Gikuyu land are recorded through songs. So Nyarota's patients turned followers have now created a new song to record this historic event. They're singing it at every opportunity they get. Dahunyo kete gyuma kwa wainga, dahunyo kete gyuma kwa wainga. Jesu ake joya, ake dhabia wega, ake hakamaguta, ake hubaguo yohono kyo. Kwa wainga diga shoka, wake rege diga shoka. Unbeknownst to many, this disease that Jeso was healing was actually brought by the white men, the tribesmen of Nyarota. They had lived with this disease for so long that they had even developed medicine and remedies to it. It is the same disease that they had used as a biological weapon of genocide against Native Americans about 2 to 4 centuries before. They even knew you should wear new clothes since they spread it to locals by giving out already infected blankets and clothing. With time, all people will leave Wainga's hut and go to Jeso's. Wainga will lose all of the people he was helping. His own people will turn against him and what he stands for. The location where this hut is located will be taken by Nyarota. And Nyarota will create a mission center there with the help of Wainga's own tribesmen. If that is not enough, his knowledge, which his people have relied on for hundreds of years, will be lost. His name will become the Gikoyo's name for a new evil supernatural being, Satan, that is being introduced into Gikoyo's psychic by Nyarota. A man who had given his life to serve his tribe will now be associated with evil. It is the greatest, most successful propaganda machine. My friends, I read those words verbatim from the real Agikoyo history and culture. And so it asks the question, why do you think the Agikoyo took to Christianity so easily when our culture, after hundreds of years of curation, was so rich and deep? So Wayaki, I'm going to turn it over to you to give your answer, your reaction, or your answer to this big question that was posed to us.
Yeah, I've heard that song before, and before I go into answering the question, I'm really glad that you haven't signed up to audition for America's Got Talent.
Really? Really, Wayaki?
Yeah, I thought she did great.
No, I'm just messing with you, Jerry. You did good. I mean, that's a really sad story because it shows the strategy that was employed to convert the Mogikoyo to Christianity. Mm-hmm. And so to answer that question that was asked, the Mogikoyo knew God before the coming of the Europeans. The Mogikoyo himself knew about God. They knew they were spiritual. They did rituals. They prayed. I like to say they, but, we pray as Agikoyo. And we had spirituality, and we knew what a spirit is. We knew what a shadow is. We knew about planes of existence. Like, we knew those things before. So it's very easy for someone who is spiritual to tap into another form of spirituality, which is what Christianity, which is a religion, but which has aspects of spirituality. it's very easy for someone who is spiritual to tap into other forms of
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yes.
So-
Can I actually add something real quick so you
Yeah.
can continue? And I love that, which
Go
you're
ahead.
saying we were already spiritual. So a new aspect of spirituality was given to us. So it was easy to take that on. And I also want to add that we are in no way demonizing Christianity. We're just telling what is, and then you can pick and choose what works for you, right? And go with it, right? Because that's what we do on this podcast. So agreed. How do you react, Wayake, to the fact that the tactics we used, such as this Wainga story, which was recorded through song, as we did as Agekoyo, right, is very similar to what was done with Native Americans 100 years ago, meaning bringing smallpox, right, as a way to convert people's religion or spirituality.
Yeah, it's a very sad realization that happened because, Wainga, for those of our listeners who don't know who Wainga is in this story, Wainga is a medicine man, and the most African and even non-African cultures have their own indigenous medicine men and medicine women who are known to be able to heal using plants, heal using spiritual powers, who are able to talk to God on your behalf. And so the Mogekoyo had that. We have the Modomogo. So Wainga was basically being discredited in that particular story to show that the power of the medicine, the Western medicine, is much more powerful than his power. But we do know that our own spiritual healers and our medicine men have that same ability even today. So it's very sad, and it's very sad that even a song was created to spread the propaganda, and that's part of the strategy of being able to blind people from the truth.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And before we continue with your thoughts, maybe I'll flip it over to Kingori for some of his thoughts and reactions.
Yeah, Jerry, I agree with Wayaki's, and I agree with actually even what you presented, song and the explanation that followed. Allow me to sidestep a little bit, because I see this as a very complex approach by the European packaging of Christianity. But not just that. But first, let's talk about all religions that are Abrahamic, and not just Abrahamic. Any religion that has a book with answers, right? It will always be a bit more seductive than any spirituality that does not have ready canned answers. So you have a situation here where the European Christians are coming into Africa, into Gikoyo land, and they're saying, this mysterious God that you guys seem to know about, but cannot really, you have not gone to a point where you've iconicized them, meaning there's no image or really ready visuals or ready imagine, and you haven't personified them enough, right? So they are a mystery. Is an unknowable God who is distant, who you don't have too many examples of him coming to earth, for example, and dealing with you firsthand and all these things. This mysterious individual, well, guess what? We know more about him, And here is a book that explains it. Here's a burning bush where he was talking to Moses. Here is all these things that are giving so many ready answers. That's very, very attractive, these answers. And then on top of that, when you look at the Gikoyo society, the way it was designed to be that the men were priests, and depending on how well they were advanced in their roles in the Kiama, in many other functions, you had very few men with ready answers. Okay, so that's why we used to go get kerera from, very senior elders, who can give you some answers. And in Gikuyu culture, not knowing is not a sin. If you don't know, you don't know, right? And it's okay to leave it as an unknown, and to pray for wisdom that one time it will be revealed. But here comes an individual who says, you see this book, God gave it to me, that guy. And by the way, they're not saying it's a different one. They came and say, you see that guy right there you're talking about? Well, I can tell you that my ancestors have met with the guy. They understand a lot about him. There are these people who are called Israeli. We are all now this, right? So they go into claiming to have ready answers about anything at all that you may have wondered about, including a mansion in heaven, whereas before it was mysterious what really happens. You're like, we go to this place called Weroa Mokaga, and now you're being told, no, you will get a mansion. So ready answers for a lot of, cliffhangers in life, and then dictated ways of life that are very granular. And so you don't have to think. You don't have to, you just follow this, follow this path, And some of it is not even biblical. Some of it is European culture that was juxtaposed with the Christianity. And then on top of that, don't forget, this packaging is everything. Just you talked about medicine from the Wainga story. That's a very good example. But there's also literacy that's coming along with this. There's access to technology that's coming along with this packaging. There's the itima, electricity,
Right.
Flip a switch, it's like, what? What is this? Machines, guns, all these things. It's their God who has enabled them. And so it's very seductive. And you want to see what's going on there, and people were pulled towards it. And I think the problem here is that there was a lack of, honesty and transparency by the European, because in other, if you've studied the Bible in the New Testament and you're looking at things like Acts of the Apostles, and these were the days when the apostles were going to spread Christianity all over when they went to places like Rome, and they found that Romans worshipped many gods. They did not come and first clash with them. They would say, oh yeah, you guys, I see you're really good. This is like an example by Paul in the Bible. You see, you guys are very studious, and you love God, and you love getting to understand God, and you're very prayerful, and this is really good. And I also noticed that you're so good at this thing that you've left a shrine for the unknown God. And just in case there's a God you don't know, you've left it open. And that was the in, right? They would say, now let me tell you about this unknown God. Right. And it would be their way in. And so what would happen is that Romans were not forced to really immediately depart from their culture or any other people, right? That's why you have Colossians, Corinthians, all these things. They're being told how to live with Christianity, or how to live with the gospel in their way, in their life, right? In their own cultures, and how to adapt it. It's not until, in the Nicene Council 300 years after Christ that you have a situation where they're saying, we're going to make this one church, right? And from then on, it's one push, one culture, one everything, until 1700 years later when they come to Africa, or 1500 years when they come our way, and now they're bringing us a fully packaged, well-oiled system that is not just bringing you the gospel, it is also bringing you cultural dominance. It's also bringing you colonization. So it was a very well-packaged thing. And when you talk about tactics, the tactics are everything here. One, you have the icons. You have an image, Christ. The passion, this person. All these images. They really went a long way to pull at your heart. And then on the ground, when they couldn't get the right the leaders to quickly follow, they would go for outsiders. Right? They would go for people who probably were not very well entrenched in the society, or whom were not very strong, and they would take those, they would uplift them, and then they would make them what they would uplift them in society. They would be their now new agents, and it would be attractive to the youth.
The chiefs?
And it just became a slow. Yeah, some chiefs were given power. Remember, Negekoyo did not have chiefs, right? So one of the things that these chiefs had to do is become Christians, and then they were made powerful, right? And they were used as colonial administrators, right? So there were so many tactics on the divide and rule aspect that slowly chipped away. And it was not. I want to correct the person who asked the question. It was not easy. It wasn't an easy battle. There were many people who tried to resist. But it took time, and that battle was lost for the most part. There were families that were splintered by this, where the younger generation is moving towards the church and the older generation is being left behind. There were women who were going and leaving their husbands. Families split up. Many things happened for the sake of the gospel or for the sake of Christianity. So it wasn't an easy thing. It took a lot of pain. Remember, you're talking about things like taxation alongside the colonization. And that's why you hear somebody like Kamaro used to say, there's no difference between
the same thing.
Yeah, a European and a priest. They're the same. They're the same people. It was a 1-2 punch between the colonialist and the church. They came very well. They were organized, and they understood that the church, the missionaries, were coming to first soften the ground, and then colonization comes in and deals the blow. So it was very well. It was very well designed, and it worked. And so, but it wasn't easy. I just want to make sure that everyone understands it was. We might look at it like, oh, how come in like 50 years of dealing with the Europeans, it looks like we all became Christian. It took a generation or two, but it was not an easy time for anyone. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts, King Ori. And then Wayaki, I'll open up to see if you have any final ones. But first, I'll say I do love the insight you brought in, Wayaki, about we were already spiritual. So it was not easy, like it was not too foreign of an idea to pick up more spirituality, right? Or a different type of spirituality. And the idea, King Ori, of ready answers, something that's already step by step, that's already in very attractive packaging, right? And when you stepped into Christianity, you got so much. You got positions of power sometimes. I think I've told the story of my first name is Tabitha, and I was named, after my grandmother Tabitha, right? And when I asked her, why did you pick the name Tabitha? She explained that she didn't pick it. It was given to her by the colonialists, by school, that if she wanted to go to school, because she went all the way until like standard 4 or something. That if she wanted to go to school, she had to become a Christian and take on a Christian name. So that's how the name Tabitha was born in our family, right? So there were so many other benefits that you got from Christianity, but also to underscore the fact that we are not passing judgment on the religion. Everybody pick your own path, right? Based on what is right for you. We're simply exploring the question that was raised by this listener. So thank you so much, King Ori. Wayaki, any final thoughts on this before we move to the next question?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is, there was a seer called, and many people have heard the story of Shagawake Viro, or commonly known as Mogawake Viro. What he did prophesy the coming of the Europeans and a bunch of other prophecies. But one of the things he had said was, when these people come, they're going to come with knowledge, technology, and religion. They're going to come with a lot of things. And he said that you should, take on the good things that they bring, but don't take on their behaviors or mannerisms or religion. And so he said that, and when a seer makes such a statement, and because in those days, there was no social media, but then when somebody of repute says something, somebody who is revered, it would spread. And so I would think, and this is just my own personal opinion, that it was very difficult to take on the good things without taking on some of the other things that maybe like the Christianity was not intended. So literacy, electricity, like King Ori is saying. So he had said, take on those good things, because the technology they brought, the medicine that they brought, was good. I can see a struggle in the hearts and minds of people in saying, if we're going to take all this technology, what is wrong with taking on Christianity and abandoning our own spirituality? So I can see an emotional struggle that can be in people's minds. So not casting judgment on anyone, but that could also be an aspect of it.
Thank you. That's beautifully eye-opening. Thank you so much for that, Wayaki. Thank you for that, King Ori. I know that was a big topic, and I think everybody's really going to appreciate the perspective that you both brought to this subject. So
Jerry, let me say something. Let me say another thing. I do think that, this is a very big topic that should have its own episode and podcast. We can do some research on and be able to delve deeper into this topic and just the history, the philosophy. It would be a good topic to talk about in the future.
Really would be, and there are more heroes than Mogo Keviro that we can actually also talk about another time. People who spiritual leaders that we've been blessed with as Agekoyo, who've really made a difference in our lives as well.
All right, guys, let us now move on to the next topic. This is about esoteric knowledge. And before the first person, so I'll have you answer this first, King Ori, and maybe start by defining, what does esoteric knowledge mean? What is esoteric? So I'm going to read the question verbatim. I may cut off some pieces which are repetitive, but it's a long question. He says, "Hi, Dayo Nyoba. My question is in regards to Gikoyo use of psychotropic herbs to achieve altered states of consciousness. All my studies seem to suggest that native communities across the globe use mind-altering plants or mushrooms to achieve trance states and to access other realms such as the ancestral plane. In America, peyote cactus is one such plant used among the natives. In Gabon, there are people that use iboga. Among the Gikoyo, what plant or fungi serves such a role, if any?" King Ori.
Yeah, this is not a topic that you hear much about. So I'm grateful that this gentleman asked it, or whoever our listener asked it. So first, let's talk about herbs in general. And let me first answer your question, esoteric versus exoteric knowledge. So exoteric knowledge is readily available knowledge that is meant to be digested by the masses. And then esoteric knowledge is the hidden knowledge within any culture, any spirituality, any spiritual system that is the driving knowledge, but is hidden from plain view. So all cultures have esoteric and exoteric knowledge. And so Kerera is actually kind of bridging both, because it's not necessarily hidden, but you have to go seek it. And it's available only if you go seek it. So it's not just out there. So you can see Kerera in general as some form of esoteric knowledge. But there's real deep Kerera that usually many of us will not attain in our lives, even if we keep searching, because it's you don't even know to ask that question, and this is one of those things. So herbs in general, there are many herbs that had many different functions, and the most common use of herbs that can start being on this playing field is herbs that were used mostly by elders for purposes of what you may call mental fortitude. So what do I mean? Like things that have been used to give you an edge in being more focused, right? So like tobacco has been used for that purpose. But if you go into Agikoyo society, there's many more. Yeah, there are mukawa, there are meteta that were put in soups for different reasons, and And there were many different herbs that were used to give you a little edge and even kwaramia, to expand one's mind so that you are more capable and wiser and things of that nature. There was a lot of belief that herbs help you expand your mental fortitude, or to give you that mental fortitude required to become wiser and to accrue more knowledge. So that is the most known use of herbs that I can first of all talk to you about with clarity, and something that I've seen and something that I've experienced. When we go into accessing other planes, like now today that is very common. We have this understanding now that you can take a mushroom or something here and you'll go into a psychotropic trip. I'm not familiar with Gekoyos utilizing such things, but I'm sure it's there. I'm sure it's there with our shamans. I'm sure it's there with our Adowago, who are saying that they're communicating with spirits and things like that. I'm sure you're seeing smokes and powders in that realm, and probably it's in use, but it's not something you can easily know unless you're part of that guild, right? One thing that I can talk about that has been discussed in yamobi.com by an elder called Samuel Kamitha is something akin to what you might see in the movie Black Panther, where Chala takes some herb and goes into some sleep mode or near-death experience, and goes into the realm of the ancestors to communicate with his father and other previous Black Panthers. If you've seen that scene is really, copy-paste from yamobi.com, which existed before Black Panther.
Wow.
And there's this elder makes that claim that it was one of the things that the most highly, I don't want to say decorated, but the person with the most, we call it gokunoro, like you have accessed realms of knowledge. As you go up a particular strata, the last step, the last grade was a 3-day death. And you were put into a 3-day coma with the use of herbs that sent you into a spiritual realm. And then you came back with a different understanding of life. Wow. So this is something that is there within the Agekoyo community. It's not common knowledge, but it's there, and we have that kerera. And there's only so far one person that I know who is Samuel Kamitha, who speaks about this particular issue, because he, as you know, his claim is that he is he's a messenger of the chief seer, or the messenger of the 12 elders of the Mount Kenya College of Seers. You be calling them that. Yeah. So that exists somewhere in our lives. It's not something that we can easily prove or disprove.
Okay, mind blowing. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Wayaki, can we move on to naming, unless you have something really hot to add to that conversation?
No, I'll just add that actually, that the story of the Black Panther, there's several people who have said that the story is an African story. It's actually a Gekoyo story. The fact that, like the story of how T'Challa dies and he's resurrected, and the story of the Ajiro, which is in that comic story. So I just wanted to add that, and we'll also share the links that King Ori has, the links to some of these topics that King Ori has mentioned in the show notes.
Ooh. You guys just keep blowing my mind. I love it. All right. So let's go now and talk about the bucket called naming. And we have 3 questions here. So the first question was, I think this one will be very quick to answer. So only one of you needs to take this one. My late mother's name was Wajiro, while my wife's late mother's name was Waboi. My wife's name is Wajiro. What name should I give my first daughter? Because his mom is Wajiro right? But his wife's name is also Wajiro.
Ajiro. Okay. Yeah. So that's fairly common. Where you I know a friend of mine who married his wife's name is Jerry and his mother is Jerry. So those situations happen fairly often, and I would say what the Moekoyo used to do is they would change the name of the person being born and use an alternate name. So, for example, if you're going to give birth to Wajiro and that's your wife and your mother, you could use an attribute, a character attribute like Nyakeo. Keo, it means effort. So you could say, especially because the word, the prefix nya means female or is represents the feminine. You can say Nyagodhie, like you've had those names, Nyagodhie, Nyakeo. Those are names that were given, they were attribute names per se, and maybe not the names of the person who was being named, so to speak.
I see. So she really is Wajiro, but her attribute name is, we'll just call it Nyakeo. And then when she gives birth to her daughter, then her daughter can be called Wajiro in this case, because she had just taken on an attribute name. I don't know, but all right. So I think that makes sense. Anything to clarify there, King Ori?
Yeah, I think what you mean, Jerry, is the next. So this young baby who's being born, who we've called Nyakeo instead of Wajiro, she that baby has both names now. Those are both her names, but we will be addressing her as Nyakeo out of respect of her mother.
Okay.
But in the next iteration, when she herself is being named by her son or her daughter, the name Wajiro can certainly come back.
Okay.
There's no problem. Yeah. And this also happens when if it's your wife's mother that you're having an issue about. If it's the lady's mother who is called Wajiro, and now they're wondering what to name this person. Obviously, that would be a different situation because it wouldn't be this. She herself would not be named Wajiro, but the mother-in-law, when being named in a family, was also by default called Modhoni or Agadhoni, and that's because those are Adhonis, and it is not proper to mention the name of your mother-in-law. So you even name your daughter Modhoni instead of her real name. So there were many things like that in the Kikuyu society, because you cannot be easily running somebody's name. If they are to be given respect, you can't easily name them and just start using that name in that manner.
Okay. That is such a great answer, guys. Thank you. And I think it ties into the next question very nicely, which is someone wrote, one of my Kikuyu names is Nyakaheti. When I ask the meaning, I am told Kaheti is a place. However, my question is there or could there be another meaning? Sounds very similar to what you guys said. What do you think?
Here, I think there's another meaning.
Okay.
Because the operative word there is heti, which comes from koheta. Heta is to move something to the side a little bit, and it's a very powerful thing, because remember, the last stage of a woman's life is keheti, right? So keheti is a woman who has almost transcended womanhood in some way. Yani she can sidestep. You see that koheta is coming again, because she can sidestep female things that that have been governing her to now be able to do more than just female jobs and female responsibilities. She can transcend that, right? So koheta usually means to move something. Like we are told, koheta guo is to kind of bunch your dress to the side, or to fold it, right? So Nyakaheti probably had a deeper meaning in this case. Probably this was someone who was named after a woman who, had, was well associated with koheta, well associated with transcending or being, or getting to that last stage of life and doing it well. and that's probably who she is named after. A grandmother who was significantly placed, in society.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, guys,
let
for
me
sharing
add something,
that.
Jerry,
Yes,
to that.
go ahead, Wayaki.
So koheta also means to fold or to bunch together. So there's a saying that says muraga akiro daregaga akihetua. It means when somebody is refusing, what that literally means is muraga akiro is somebody who doesn't listen will not stop when they die. Because when Kikuyus died, the practices of burying were various, but they would fold the legs. So koheto is to fold someone's legs. So it means that if they don't listen when they're alive, when they die, they have to listen. When they're being folded, they're not gonna say, "No, I can't. My legs cannot be folded." So nyakaheti can mean various things. It could just mean that she's the female of Kaheti, which could be a place and could be the meaning of the word Kohetua. So it could mean various things.
Okay, good. So delicious in terms of all the ways the name could go. So I do hope, Nyakaheti, that this discussion really gave you some color. All right, guys. So now it's time to dive into the second to last segment called Other Social Issues. All right, so here's the first question, and either of you can jump in. How was the process of inheritance managed?
Now, Yaki, do you want to tackle that one?
Actually, that's a question that I don't have a good answer for. I would say, when an elder was coming to... okay, let me start with... there's a saying that says, "Mudumoge egayaga atanakura." What that means is someone who is wise will usually divide up his or her estate when they are young, and they don't wait until they are so old where they are mentally infirm and are maybe unable to make good decisions about their estate planning. And so, and estate planning, as we know today, is a big issue because we see a lot of court incidents and fights where families are fighting over an estate of a recently deceased person.
Right.
So the Mogekoyo, I would say, from what I have gathered, is they would plan their passing down the inheritance to their children fairly early. Their children would actually know what, especially the sons, because the inheritance of particularly land was given to sons, would be planned. I remember my grandfather, way before he became infirm, he had already divided his property among his 5 sons. So it wasn't, I would say, a modern day estate planning where you sit with an estate lawyer. But a patriarch of a family would sit down with his family and say, these are the wishes, this is how I wish to divide my estate, and would make that decision with the consent of his family.
I love that we thought about these things in advance, right? Because sometimes today we are finding that, like you said, some of these issues, it's almost, I've heard people say, like, you don't want to kill your parent before are you trying to kill me, right? And I'm using those words. That's not what it is. The Mogikoyo understood death happened. They accepted that it was part of the transition, and they prepared for that situation, including estate planning as we know it, or inheritance as we know it. And I think that is a super beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, King Ori?
I think this is one of those questions where it's complicated only because we are looking at it from a Western lens. In Gikuyu culture, it was very well understood who was going to get what, because even as you were young men were getting married, let's say you have this elder who has children and they're getting married, they would be settled according to very particular way of settling them. Your mother's home is here, so you're going to build behind her, and so on and so forth. And there would be a satellite arrangement away from the dad as they're being settled in different areas of the vast land that the man owned. So it wasn't really that big of a deal as far as subdivision of land, because it was understood if you have more than one wife, that land would be separate, would be split up per wife equally, and then however many children they got, those children within their partition, according to their mother's portion, would split up equally as well, unless there was a reason to give more. And usually the last born and the firstborn would get more. For some, we can't get into that particular, there's the reasons for that, but usually they'd get something more, mainly because of responsibilities and that they would have to pay. And then don't forget, the last born son would get the father's original homestead. That's how it was managed. But as far as like your father's things, your father's jongwa, his chair, those ones he cannot give out before he's dead, right? So those are the things that, any real personal things that he owned that were to his person. Those are the things I think it was very difficult for you to say that you're going to ask someone to subdivide while they're still using them,
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand that, yes.
Yeah. We're not talking about a bank account here.
Right.
There's 2 million somewhere. No,
right, and subdividing it. You're right. In that case, you'd be like, I'm still here. Why would you want me to subdivide
why am I
my
going
money?
to give you my seat? I am sitting on it.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you for that clarification. I love it so much. All right, so then let's go to the next question. Did the Agekoyo have an overall or supreme leader or paramount chief? Did the Agekoyo fight amongst themselves, or was there interclan rivalry? Were there incidences of civil war?
Let me tackle that first one about leadership. In different times of our history, we have had chiefs, we have had leaders, we have had even despotic leadership, where you have a dictator. We've had that. We've had this one ruler who's in a particular region, calling the shots. And that is where you will often hear something called the gira wairegi, which means the resistance, the gira of the resistance, which has actually happened more than once and has even been described. It's well described in the story of Wagoa Makeri, for example, where you have Wagoa Makeri being a chief and who was also quite a dictator, and how she was overthrown by men when they did some certain tactics. But so we've had leadership,
but she was not the only one,
and women.
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Where they, in the distant past, we had Adamaki who, took too much power and it necessitated a revolution and even led to what we call today the Keama Keama. Is actually something that came out of such a scenario where they redistributed power to all families and rested the power in a council of elders rather than one leader. So that was as a response to a dictator. So it's happened. Civil wars or inter-clan rivalry, our clans are not set up that way. This clan is on, it can be found in a certain region or location or ridge, right? It's not the way we are set up. So interclan rivalry is mainly, maybe I can call it, for lack of a better term, I can call it a rivalry that is, verbal or an intellectual exercise. We'd never fought. We never had wars between clans. It's actually really impossible for Ekoyo clans to fight because we are completely interwoven, intermarried, and we have no problem about that. So I hope that answers those two questions.
Oh, yes, it does. Thank you so much. Wayaki, anything to add?
Yeah, I would want to say that maybe the person is talking about maybe inter-family fights and family feuds. I mean, we don't want to say that we didn't have families fighting maybe over some land here and there, but civil war, I haven't had it documented. But I would to add on to what King Ori is saying about the Girawa Iragi. Iragi means the people who actually resisted, or because Kodaga is to refuse. And so I think the Iragi generation is a generation that should be studied by most Kikuyus, because it shows how we did revolution, how we were able to change laws, how we were able to change the process of our evolution as Agekoyos. And it's a very interesting topic that is discussed in various forums, and which we can learn from a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wayaki, for that as well. All right, let's move to the next one, which is really interesting because this one is a big deal to me. And the question is, did the Agekoyo celebrate birthdays?
I mean, let me take that quickly. We didn't celebrate birthdays. We didn't have these Western sort of celebrations like baby showers, birthdays, anniversaries. We didn't have those or put them up on a pedestal the way we do today. At least I haven't. At least in my research and conversations, when I'm looking for more and more Kirira, I haven't found any evidence of this, unless King Ori, you've seen it differently.
There's no birthday song either.
All right, but that doesn't absolve you two from calling me on my birthday and buying me presents. Just being clear.
When is your birthday?
That does not absolve you. Okay, thank you for that. All right, second to last in this category. Did the Agekoyo have an alphabet? Did we have our own written accounts before the white man?
That's another no, right? So on the surface, we didn't have an alphabet for sure. We also, but we had Goshana. We had forms of hieroglyphs that we can see in the Geshadi. It's like a gourd that has a lot of markings that tell a story. So we had a form of writing that was hieroglyphic. And then there's also, going back into that esoteric knowledge that we talked about earlier, there are some magical things called manage that can be found in Mount Kenya that contain ikojo, which is a word for scroll. So I've never seen them, but there's tales about that, right? So there's tales about knowledge that's been kept in the snows of Mount Kenya in some shrine that we call manage and ikojo. So maybe, but it's not something that is in the general public.
Okay, so what you're saying is we didn't have an alphabet, but we certainly, there is some proof that we had some kind of writing. Right?
Yeah, written communication exists. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. To add to that, there's a book on the Geshade, and the Geshade, if you go on YouTube, there are singers who sing the Geshade. The Geshade is really like an instrument for higher poetry and knowledge, which is difficult to understand. Some of the things they talk about are esoteric, like King Ori is saying. But the Geshade had its own language and method of communication. I do also want to add that the knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation, from age set to age set, was usually passed. The way we educated our children was orally and through practice, like practical application, teaching someone physically. So all the knowledge that you see even written on some of these books was knowledge that was passed down orally until then it was documented in the last 100 years or so. So everything we taught was more oral rather than written.
I love what you're saying, Wayaki, because it confirms that just because something was not written doesn't mean we did not have a really incredible mechanism of passing on that knowledge in very specific ways from generation to generation, age set to age set. And clearly we did it very well because we had a very well functioning society. So I love that you're saying that as well, that, hey, listen, it wasn't written, but we really had great knowledge and we knew how to pass on a lot of that knowledge. And then to correct myself, of course, the Yeshade was some examples, and the other one that King Ori said, some examples of written knowledge. Thank you, guys. Last question.
Let me add something
Yes.
else, just one more thing. So two things. So during the Irua period, during the initiation period, a lot of knowledge was passed on from the elders to the initiates. A lot of knowledge. It was like going for a college class. And then also during the passing of one ruling generation, when they were handing down the power from one generation to the next generation, there was days that were spent on passing down that knowledge. And of course, it wasn't written during the process of what is called Ituika, which you can read about in some of the books written on, even though not a lot is written on that because most of that knowledge that was being passed is esoteric. So we did have that method of passing that knowledge. I wanted to point out those two particular ones, but we passed down a lot of knowledge at every level of life.
Love that. Thank you so much, Wayaki. Love it. All right, last question in this section. Which artifacts are unique to the Agikoyo?
That's another big question because there are many, right? I think artifact really means something that's made by a particular culture in general. But I think in the way of saying what are unique artifacts that pop out as rare or that are unique only to Mogekoyo. If that's a question, then I think the things that we already mentioned, like manage, is one of them. That would be something that's very magical, that is only found on the mountain. While we're at the mountain, there's another artifact. There's a stone called a ryoki. Ryoki is actually what today is called Kenyite. That is its common name. Its geological name, it's called Kenyite because it was first discovered in Kenya, and it can only be found in Kenya and the Antarctic. And it is said to have been a meteorite, a unique meteorite that hit the Earth, split up, and landed in the Antarctic and in the Mount Kenya area. So it actually is said to have been perhaps the thing that formed Mount Kenya, as in it hit so hard, it caused the earth to split up, and there was magma that flowed for a very long time, forming the mountain. And you can still find that stone. The Mogekoyo revered that stone, and they used to create, I'm forgetting the name of that artifact, but they used to create this stone that had a circle inside it. And if you swore by that stone, and then you could pass something like a blade of grass inside that circle 7 times, it was seen as one of the most ultimate swearing you can ever do. So, like you can compare it to placing your hand on a Bible, in Christianity. So it was one of those things, if you swear by that, and of course there are others like Origathe, but there was this one that was also one of them.
Right? Is it?
I think, Gedavi, thank you. Yeah. So that artifact is very unique in Owekoyo. And there are a few others, the Gashadis, like Shade that we just talked about right now is very unique.
Some of the furniture,
the
furniture too, that is unique to our culture. Some of the furniture, like the Jongwa and is some of those are very unique. Some of the jewelry that we produced was unique to our culture, and some of this jewelry is detailed in some of the books that were written by Cognalo and other books. I will add them on the show notes. But if you want to read about these unique artifacts, which even have those artifacts have their own hidden wisdom or their own kirira that can be studied and researched on. So we did have a lot. We do have a lot of unique artifacts. If I may just answer that question plainly.
There's Gedito, that anything you can be given to, like a magic totem, to protect you from evil spirits. We had many different things.
So many things. I love it. Yeah, thank you. And so I love those answers. I have learned so much, guys. And now what I'm going to do is something a little different. I'm going to be teacher Njeri. And so I'm going to give you
Not
guys
Wajiko.
instruction. So let me start by saying this. Yeah, teacher Njeri. All right. So the last bucket of questions, right, was so interesting. They had to do with single motherhood. But what's interesting is that the next episode after this is going to go into depth into what Meruru is or what we did in the case of single motherhood. So we're going to go really deep. But for the sake of honoring the questions that were asked, I'm going to read the first one. I'm going to ask Kingori to read the second one and Wayaki to read the third one. The first question that was asked was, how should a young man whose father is not present in their life navigate the Odhoni process? Note, no one is available on the paternal side. ... All right, Kingori, question number 2 that will also be covered in the episode on Meruru.
And that question is, I have heard that a single mother who has never been married should also do some ceremony, which is like Rorashio. Otherwise, she cannot receive dowry for her daughter or take her son to Korashia. That, for me as a woman, feels oppressive. But how do we go about this? That was the question number 2. Yeah.
Thank you. Wayaki, number 3.
So the question reads, if a child was born out of wedlock, what was the process for marrying another man? That is, not the father of the child.
Deep question, guys, and we thank you and honor you for submitting these and all the questions that were submitted. In the next episode on Meruru, we will go deep into this idea of single motherhood because it is important that we understand the Moyekoyo perspective on this issue.
I'm just very excited that our listeners had so many questions because this really shows that people are very curious to connect all the dots. You've heard so much from different corners. You want to bring it back alive. We want to bring our culture to the forefront again and live by it and be guided by it. And it's a beautiful thing. And let's all keep doing our part. Gayamora Adime. And let's see where we go with this.
Yeah, let me say that there was one listener who had asked what books they need to read so that they can learn more. And I suggested to them that they should, the better way to learn is to go and talk to your elders and to ask those questions from your parents, your grandparents, and people who are in the know. So, because we can get book knowledge, but then when we speak to people who have actually lived these experiences, we get more wisdom. So apart from reading books and buying books, I think it's also good to go and talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, talk to elders who are experienced and can answer some of these questions that we may even not be able to answer.
And one more thing, practice, practice, practice. This is not just theory. So if you're asking about Russia, I hope it means that you want to go Russia and that you actually will, and not just want to know about it. Because it's in the practice that we will bring these things alive, and it's when that they become impactful in our lives.
All right. Thank you, and see you all in the next episode. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening and for joining us on this journey where we honor our history, where we honor our heritage, where we honor our ancestors. We are grateful. You can find Matire Gemi on social media, which is Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can also find us on Clubhouse, where we will occasionally host some live discussions following some of our episodes. We look forward to seeing you. Our website is matire-gemi.simplecast.com. Our email is matire.gemi@gmail.com. And this podcast is hosted, produced, and contributed to by Wayaki Yeshanga, Kingori Kanyi, and Jerry Diho. Thank you, and please share this widely.